All right. So yes. So welcome to the L04 and also to the assignment discussion today. So my name is Zafar. So today is the 16th of July 2023, and it's a Sunday. So welcome to the session. So we'll go through yesterday's L04 quickly. That was to do with the application of human resource management practices in a work-related context. Yeah, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So so mainly what we should have discussed yesterday is to look at some kind of a job and personal specification, job design, preparation of job specs and personal specs. Now, job specification is it tells you what the job entails, what the requirements of the job, skills, requirements of the job, entry requirements, application of recruitment and selection models and so on. So the job specification, what is the job, what are the duties, what are the skills requirement, what are the entry requirements, what are the job entails, and the personal specification is what your requirements are, what degree, what qualifications you need, what practical skills you need, what tests you should have, or for example, what specific requirements for the job. Okay, so there's two things. One's a job application, then there's a job specification, then there's job requirement. All these will be part and parcel of the recruitment and selection. Okay, so when you have the time, the L04 is mainly application of HR practices in an organization. So you look up at job specification or your job requirements or job application form in your organization, or maybe if you don't have an organization, just research what the job application looks like, what the job specification looks like, what the requirements of a specific job. For example, if you are applying for a administrative manager or a general manager or accountant or any other human resource personnel, right? So you just type maybe Google, and then you'll get some kind of a job specification, application, and the requirements of job. So this is mainly to the L04, mainly is application of job application, okay? Taking into account the legislation. So we talked about the legislation last week, the requirements of the legislation like recruitment and selection, or the specification, or we looked at the legislation like what you call them, race relations, for example, or minimum wage act, for example. We looked different legislation. We looked at the different laws in the UK, and you can also look at the laws in Pakistan, for example. What are the job application? What are the requirements? What are the legal the laws regarding the HR, okay? Recruitment and selection in practice is what's the impact of technology, what's the impact of recruitment, what's the impact of training, for example, what type of resources that you use, what type of digital platform that you can use, look at different job platforms, social networking, that kind of thing, application of, okay, designing a CV, designing an application, putting the adverts in a particular newspapers, job application, shortlisting, processing applications, that kind of thing. So when you look at the L04, mainly it's to do with your application, how you would carry out, how you would do the application of, job in a particular situation. So in order to pass, you need to illustrate the application of human resource management in practice in a work-related context using specific examples. So for example, if you're applying for a job, how would you go through placing an advert? How you would go through selecting people, how you would interview them, how you would recruitment, shortlisting, recruitment, and then making a decision to appoint. And also maybe, once they are appointed, how would you get them into workplace, like their induction, for example, induction program, looking at the policies and practices of the organization, okay, making sure that you give them training when they come in. Induction is something that they need. They need to know what the policies, what the application of these policies, or what the job requirements, making sure that they know everything about the job itself. Okay, so that's the application. Maybe looking at that kind of so P7 is just to illustrate the application of HR practices in a workplace. If you want to apply for a merit, provide a rationale for the application of specific HR practices in a work-related. Again, provide a reason for this, practice. Why is it important? What's the reason for not importance, and so on. So you need to really make sure that you apply. Okay, so that was all. The LO4. We would have discussed it yesterday. So okay, so that was a P4. Related to LO4. Okay, so today's discussion mainly looks at your assignment. So let's look at the assignment in entirety. Okay, so you got two parts in your whole assignment. There's LO1, LO2, LO3, LO4. Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got 4 learning outcomes. There were 4 learning outcome that you need to cover in your assignment. Okay, so the first learning outcome, it says learning outcome is explain the purpose and scope of human resource management in terms of resourcing an organization with talent and skills appropriate to fulfill business objectives. So that's the LO1, that's the main heading. Is that right? Okay, yeah. So this is the main heading, and then there's P1, P2, M1, M2, and D1. So P1 is mainly pass. If you want to go for a pass, you tackle this P1, and P2 only in this particular LO. Okay.
So it means that
P1 and P2. There is a P1 means pass number 1 and pass number 2. So you only need to do 2 tasks to pass this particular learning outcome. Okay. If you want to go for a merit, which is a higher grade, then you need to look at M1 and M2, which is this 2 grades. Okay, M1 says assess how the HR function can provide skilled talent to fulfill the objectives of your organization. And M2 says evaluate the recruitment and selection using models and theories. If you want to go for a distinction, which is a higher one, okay, critically evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of different approaches to recruitment and selection, supported with your examples. So basically P1 in P2 is just a pass. Okay.
Okay.
M1 and M2 is a higher grade. So where you assess. So in order to pass your exam, in order to pass your assignment, you explain, you tell us what you think. Okay. So you're looking at the verbs. Okay, when you look at your assignment, look at the first verb. What it's saying is explaining, assessing, evaluating, critically evaluating, or critically analyzing. As you go higher and higher, this will the difficulty of the verb goes more and more. Okay, explaining is the simple word, a simple word. Explain what is meant by this particular theory and how you would give an example of this. And that will get you a pass. If you want to go for a higher, means assessing, you looking at the both sides of the argument. You tell us weaknesses, you tell us strengths, or your advantages and disadvantages, and your decision, assessing, okay, and evaluating both sides of the argument. And then you go for a higher grade, critically evaluate, means you don't take sides of either, but you distinguish, or you evaluate both sides and give your own opinion. Critically evaluate, maybe give your own opinion and support it with your examples, and decide, which one do you favor and why. You critically evaluating. Okay, so that will get you a distinction. So let's look at the P1 and P2. First of all, you have to pass both of them. You cannot get an M grade or you cannot get a D grade unless you pass. All right. So these two. Yeah, so you have to make sure that you pass. In order to get you a pass, P1 and P2, it says explain the purpose and functions of HR. So simply you tell us what is the function of the HR, what do they do, right? What do they do? What's their job? How do they function? How do they operate? What is their duties, for example, you know? So we looked at the nature and scope of HRM in organization. So here you explain here what are the functions of the organization, for example, recruitment and selection and training and you know, the duties of HR. Yeah, we did that LO1. Okay, so this you explain the duties of this very simply. Okay, maybe in a page, a half a page, or you know, it depends on how you explain. Okay, then use examples from an organization. You give us strengths and weaknesses of different approaches to recruitment and selection. We looked at the soft approach, we looked at the hard approach, we looked at the best fit approach. Okay, you look at the best practices. Which one do you think is good? Which one do you think is bad? Why do you think is? So you're looking at the examples. Okay, so this is P2. It says use examples from an organization. Maybe you can look at an organization from your own viewpoint, or give an example of a practical example or theoretical example, and strengths and weaknesses of a soft approach, hard approach, what's the best practices, what's the best approach. You remember, you're looking at the human resources from a strategic viewpoint, you're looking at this human resources from a cost point of view. Did you discuss this with last time? Yeah, LO1, do you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. Soft models and here soft models and hard models, you know, HR planning. Some people view the human resources as cost, some people review it as a strategic assets. So you compare both of these theories or models, all right?
Yeah.
So that will give you a P2. That will you look at the P2. Then when you come to M1, which is merit, so you assess. Okay, you assess and you tell us what do you think the HR function. Is it a good function? Is it a bad function? Does it fill your objective? Does it fill the objectives of the organization? How does it do this? So it says assess how HR function can provide skills and talents to fulfill objectives. So here maybe you need to assess SWOT analysis, for example, pestle analysis. Do you understand? Yeah.
Yeah.
You look at the workforce planning.
Analysis.
Okay, you look at the internal requirements of the business, you look at the external supply of labor, for example, where's the shortage, where is the and how would you get rid of the shortage? For example, you know, you recruit people and you provide them with recruitment and provide them with training or kind of something like this. How would you fulfill the labor requirements? Where is the supply? Like we have a geographical location, you know, we discussed this. Yeah, last time we discussed this labor turnover, stability, retention. How do you keep the labor? Where is the labor? Why do the people move about? Geographical reasons, for economic reasons, or for you know, whatever. Yeah, whatever reasons. So that kind of thing. Okay, so you assess where they're going to get the labor from, and is there enough labor supply in the market, and if not, what would you going to do? Yeah. Okay, so you explain about the SWOT techniques like SWOT analysis, pestle analysis, labor turnover. You look at the stability, you look at the retention, you look at the internal labor requirements, and you look at even the regulatory framework, right? Advantages and disadvantages of technology, and how you will improve the efficiency of the labor market in your organization, right? Okay. You also go into the M to evaluate recruitment selection. So you next move up in a bit of ladder and you evaluate. So sources of recruitment, internal and external, good or bad. Yeah, what is the advantages of internal recruitment? What are the disadvantages of external recruitment? And how would you look at them? How would you retain people? You look at the job analysis, you look at the job description, personal spec, competency requirements. So that's kind of recruitment. Selection, how would you select? Interviewing, selection secondary methods or primary methods. What's the strengths and weaknesses of each method. You look at the induction process, you look at the issues regarding induction, you look at the socialization of employees. So that will look at the M1, M2, and also it will be looking at the D1 as well, critically evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of different approaches. Now here you need to get your own opinion, all right? You look at everything in P1 and P2 and M1 and M2, and then when you do the D1, you evaluate, you decide which is good, which is bad, decide why it's bad, and give your verdict. You evaluate, okay? So different approaches. So this is your own analysis, in other words, right? So here, because the LO1, it says explain the purpose and scope of HR. It's a wider sense, then broken down into P1, 2, M1, M2, and D1. Okay, so there's at least a 5 specific things that you go for. If you only want to go for a P1 and P2, that's perfectly fine. Okay, so you don't need to bother about M1 and M2 and D1. All right, so you just select P1 and P2, give examples, and that should suffice for your P, if you're only aiming for a P, pass. Okay. So what are you looking for? Are you looking for a distinction? You're looking for a merit? You're looking for a pass only? What do you think you're going to go for?
Distinction.
Distinction. So you have to really work extra hard, all right? So if you have to give examples, you have to read a lot, you have to make sure that you reference your work, you make sure that you use Harvard style referencing, making sure that your bibliography is up to date with, if you are consulting the websites, make sure that you quote the websites, make sure that when you're writing your assignment, you quote the sources within the source, within your writing, okay? And you make sure that, making sure that your first page or the second page, you have a full table of contents, page number, you have all these titles, making sure that every single LO is titled, make sure that whatever you answer is written down. You are tackling this particular P1 and underneath your answer P2, and make sure that you write the P2 and write the answer underneath, followed by all these academic literature and so on. Okay, so contents, and you have to have a declaration page that your work is up to scratch, i.e. is not plagiarized, or any declaration you need to sign that your work is original. Work is your own, okay? It's not copied, or it's not, somebody hasn't done it. So it's your own original work. So you know this, yeah? Which is academic credibility. Okay, so let's move on to, so size number 12.
What's the word limit for assignment?
What's the word limit?
Yeah.
At least between 3,000 and 4,000 words. Okay, 3,000 and 4,000 words you have to write. Okay.
If I write 6,000, is there any issue?
If you write 6,000 words, it's an issue. No, there isn't. Yeah. But make sure that within these words, you answer the question that's required. So don't go over too much, because if you go over too much, then that means you're taking longer to answer. Try and limit your answer to the requirements of the word limit, okay?
Okay.
10% plus or minus, fine. But nobody's going to penalize if it's a 6,000 words, all right? Okay. Any other question?
No.
Okay. L2 is about evaluating the effectiveness of the key elements of human resource management in an organization, right? So this one is a second LO, which is to look at the effectiveness of the key elements of HRM in an organization. Now you need to pick up? Do you know any organization, or what are you going to do? I know you're not working.
How?
Are you working? It says evaluate the effectiveness of elements of human resource management in an organization. So you need to relate your work to an organization. I mean, having said that, I know if you're not working, how would you select this? How would you go about evaluating? How would you pick up examples? So maybe you can look up at Coca-Cola, maybe you need to look at Toyota,
Apple.
sorry, in an organization. So you look up different, you look up an example of different organizations. So you research, you look at the Google and you search about the organization. How do these organizations use the HR in practice, all right? So if you don't work, if you haven't got an organization, if you don't have a workplace, you pick up a research tool, you go and research about an organization. I'm sure you'll find some materials about these organizations, all right? Coca-Cola, IKEA, Tesco's, other organization in Pakistan or the UK, right? So this, there's, in this LO2, there's also maybe, there's also other of distinctions and merits. And we can look at the P3, for example. We've covered P2 in the first two, in the first LO, okay? P1 and P2. Yeah. This comes here, P3 and P4, okay? So P3 says explain the benefits of different HRM practices within an organization for both the employer and the employee. And P4 looks at the evaluate the effectiveness of different HRM practices in terms of raising organizational profit and productivity. And the M3 looks at the exploring the different methods used HRM practices, providing specific examples to support evaluation within an organizational context, okay? So this is to do with your LO2. Now here, what you need to do is you need to look at the benefits of different HRM practices within an organization for employer and employee. We need to look at the, here it talks about your learning organization, training, development, okay? Because it says the benefits of different HRM practices. So in an organization, people will send our employees for training, for development, for learning. So you need to look at the benefits of learning, benefits of training, and how people go on to training courses. So the training gap, in other words, the training gap or the training needs analysis, or looking at the organization, how do they identify training needs? So you're talking about the training needs of people, right? So you sit down with people, you talk to them, and you ask them what you need. Maybe you need a, you need to ask them where you are good, where you are bad, what your training needs, and how you would go and get the support from an organization requiring your training, so you can upskill your training for the benefit of the organization. Okay, so I need to identify the training gaps, the type of training, training that you're going to give to employees. What are their benefits? You send people to training and evaluate the training. You look at the job design, for example. You need to look at the reward reward management, i.e. how you would motivate them, how you would reward people. We talked about motivational theories last time, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yes, like, give them bonus, give them intrinsic value, extrinsic value. For example, give them holidays. For example, why do people work? People work for money, and people work for pleasure, and people work for social network. So we looked at the theories of motivation. So you relate some of those theories to this practice, okay? People work because they need social network. People work because they need basic needs, because they want to buy a house and food and so on. So theory X and Y will give you some kind of more than, more than motivation for work. And whereas the what you call them, Friedrich Winslow Taylor's theory of motivation, or when they started jobs specializing in different job, they looked at the motivation because of the pay. If the more payment, the more people specialize, or the more specialist you become, the more people work because they have become specialists in their jobs. So the Taylor's theory, it's based on motivation to work or payment only, job rate, piece rate, time rate, and he looked at the only motivation for work was the job, going for work for what you call the wages, salary, money. Whereas the theory X and Y or other Herzberg's theory or other theories, they look at social factors as well. Okay, so you need to look at those, why people work and why people don't work, what's the motivation theories. Okay, then you need to look at some kind of job design, job extension, motivation, rotation of jobs. If the people are not motivated, how do you motivate them? Is maybe give them a kind of additional work, give them a kind of additional duties, or rotate their job, or job evaluation, or different job designs, extension activities that we talked about the other day, right? We looked at different theory of job rotation, job enrichment, job, do you remember?
Yes.
Yes, job rotation, job evaluation, move them people around because job enrichment, job extension, that kind of thing. So that will give you a different viewpoint. So P1 is just simply explain the benefits of these practices. P3, right? P4 is evaluate how effective these are. So if you move people around, or if you give them motivation, or if you give them some kind of a reward, or if you give them some kind of a more social benefit or holidays or something like this, they will work more. So P4 asks you to evaluate the effectiveness. Are these theories, are these motivational theories, or all these bonuses, or all these extra holidays, or all these time off work, or flexible practices, are they working or not working? Do they give organization more practice, more profit? Do they reduce labor turnover, or do they increase the productivity? Do the people work harder, or people work less harder? Yeah, because if you look at the social factors, like what we call them Hawthorne experiment, if you study about Hawthorne experiment, the productivity increased because in Hawthorne experiment, people had breaks, and they also had some social relationship, but the productivity increased despite the having more breaks, compared to the people who didn't have breaks, and compared to people who didn't have a social network. Okay, so you need to look at that human factor. All right. M3 says explore the different methods used in HRM practices, providing specific example to support evaluation within the internal organizational context. So it says explore the different methods. So how are these used in organizations? So you need to now give examples. So for example, Coca-Cola uses this, Toyota Corolla uses this, benefits, performance related practices, rewards, performance management methods, right? Monitoring and checking, rewarding, holidays, payments, reward system, that kind of thing. So you pick up an example, you show how this works in practice. Okay, and that's LO2. Basically, this is LO2, the effectiveness of key elements of human resource management in an organization. Okay, LO2 is you're looking at the practices, you're looking at the motivation theories, you're looking at the performance management, you're looking at the training, you're looking at the training needs, and job design, and rewarding people. Okay, and how are these successful? So you're looking at that angle. Any question on that?
No.
You're okay, perfectly happy?
Yeah.
That's LO2. Okay. LO3, when we look at the LO3, it says, analyze internal and external factors that affect human resource management decision-making, including employment legislation. Now, here we are looking at legislation, okay? Law. You are looking at the internal factors that affect HRM decision-making. So internal factors, looking at these issues, for example, maybe employment relations, industrial relations, okay? Engagement, strategies for building, improving employee relations. So you're looking at the internal unions, for example. You understand?
Yes.
The representation of people, the representation of workers inside the organization, role of trade unions, local, national bargaining. You are looking at the grievances, you are looking at the redundancy procedure, you are looking at the discipline, best practice, okay, in the industry relations within the organization, overtime, for example, or the role of the unions, the role of trade organization, the role of training, the role of management, and the role of employee representatives, and so on. So if you have any issue and you are looking at the internal policies and practice of the organization, you know, there is a handbook, there is an employee handbook, there is employee training manual, there's an employee representation. So you look at those redundancy materials, or equality, data protection, health and safety, working conditions in the organization, dismissal procedures, recruitment procedures, employment contracts. So you're looking at these legal issues inside the organization, right? If you're working on a computer, then you need to have a good chair, make sure that it's right height, making sure that the light is perfect in the particular room, temperature, you know, it's not too cold, not too warm, i.e. the health and safety. And if there is a problem within people, then you need to make sure that these are taking a risk assessment. So you have to make sure that people are safe at work. You don't want to make them sick, and so that everybody gets into issues afterwards. So health and safety regulations, health and safety at work act, very important piece of legislation in the UK. Okay, so this is saying internal and external factors. So the internal is the running of the organization internally, right? So externally is the legal bit, okay? Laws, legislation from outside, the government's role, the key legal issues, the constraints of other organization practices in other organizations, how the law is affecting your organization in terms of recruitment and selection, and your practices making, okay, what are your legal duties, what are your you know, what's your industrial relation like, what's your government like, what's your internal, how you would improve your industrial regulations and ethical responsibilities, and making sure that health and safety, redundancy, dismissal, employment contracts, employment relations, employment engagement, okay, strategies for building improvement, employee relations, and all this is important. And so you need to look at these internal and external factors, right? Legislation and practices in the organization, okay? Yeah, did you get that? So yeah, basically you are looking at the legal issues, you are looking at what's driving the legal issues and how they are implemented in organization. You're looking at the body of the trade union relations, you're looking at the representing employees, representing employers. If there is a dispute, then what do you do? Okay, and what legislations you know, affect all this collective bargaining and so on, grievances, the best practice. You can give examples. Okay. LO4, it says apply human resource management practices in a work-related context. So, for example, here you are applying human resources practices in workplace, right? So maybe you need to have a look at the job, as I said earlier, you need to look at job application, job adverts, right? Examples of training, examples of legislation. How are they implemented in the organization? How are people are treated within the organization? Recruitment, selection, job application, job adverts. How do you write an advert? How do you prepare a CV? How do you write a CV? Making sure that you are taking all these application of IT, for example, the use of online material, the use of online resources, use of agencies, for example, digital platforms, social networking, for example, all these shortlisting, processing, and so on. Okay, so this is basically the application of your recruitment and selection or HRM practices in a work-related context. So you apply, you relate your policies and practice in the HRM, how you would go about applying that. And that is, you're looking at the job and job itself and how are they related. So in a nutshell, this is quite a big, lengthy, assignment, but it's asking you to work in detail about these specific requirements of your applications of LO, okay, learning outcomes. Okay. Yeah, so this is not an easy task. It's a bit lengthy, but you need to do a lot of reading. You need to do a lot of research and make sure that you look at the LO, what is requiring you to do. Application, in order to application means this is, you need to do it in practice. You need to give us examples. You need to illustrate the application of HR in practice in a work-related situation with examples. So you look at the how these practices are applied in examples. So make sure that when you are tackling a P1, it says P7 here, for example, illustrate the application. So you are showing with an example. But when you are coming for a merit, when you want to claim a merit and distinction, you must make sure that you provide analysis and arguments for and against, and evaluate your own decision or application with an examples, right? And you have to do a lengthy discussion, recommendation, in other words, all at the time, backed with your theory and backed with your practice. Make sure that your assignment has good references. Okay. So what we've done today basically is we looked at your LO1 to LO4 relating to your assignment in specific. Okay. Right. Any question or anything you're not sure, or I'm sure you'll have to read up, and I'm sure you have to research, and you have 2 weeks to do the assignment. Make sure that you look at the resources on Moodle. Do you have access to Moodle?
Yeah.
You have access to Moodle. Make sure that
yes.
There are ebooks. Make sure that you have access to ebooks. Make sure you have access to journals, for example, or make sure you research. Make sure you use websites. Make sure you use organizations. You can research about organizations like a Coca-Cola, Tesco, IKEA, Shell, or other organizations. They will have loads of practices. They'll have a load of HR examples, so you relate your work, or maybe when you are in your own organization, you pick up your practices from your place of work and apply those. How are these, because how are these practices used in your workplace? Okay. Right. Yes. Make sure that you tackle the LOs first, all these LO. If you miss any P1 or P2 or any LOs, then you will not be able to claim any grade. make sure that you complete the P1s first before you go to the M1 and M2 or D1s and D2s, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to explain LO1 also, or just give a heading of LO1?
No, you
And
just
start.
write the heading of LO1 because that's the umbrella. That's the heading. LO1 just to do with the whole thing. First, there are 4 LOs in this subject, in this module, in this yeah. There are 4 LOs. Or LOs means that you are covering all the syllabus within 4 learning outcomes. And then within that learning outcome, within each learning outcome, there is different specific assessment criteria. Now, one of those criteria is P1 and P2. Okay, P1 says this, explain the purpose and functions of HR. P2 says use examples from an organization to explain strengths and weaknesses of different approaches. So you need to explain different approaches, soft approach and hard approach and strategic approach, or whatever. So this will give you these if you answer P1 and P2, that will satisfy your answer to LO1. Do you understand?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So you need to only tackle 2 P1s and P2s. That will satisfy your LO1. If you want to claim merit, then you need to look at merit 1 and merit 2. Okay. If you want to claim distinction, then you need to talk about the distinction. Right? You cannot get a merit unless you pass the first 2. If you fail these 2 assignment, or if you fail the P1, but you have written M1, yeah, but you can't get M1 because you have to pass the both P2s first.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
So you got to pass the basic things first, then you go for a higher grade. You can't get a higher grade unless you pass. And if you will not pass the lower grade, you cannot get a higher grade. Then you come and do the LO2 here. The LO2 is the evaluate the effectiveness of the key elements of HRM in an organization. So you look up here, the effectiveness of key elements. Now, the effectiveness of key elements in an organization is you look at the different learning, development, training, reward, motivation theories. You look at this flexibility, you look at these models, you look at the benefits, you look at the working conditions, performance, right? All this you will have to look at when we are talking about the evaluate the effectiveness of elements of HRM, right? Then there are P3 and P4 here. So you need to tackle these before you can claim M3 or the distinction grade. Do you understand? Hello, Ishika?
Yeah, I'll understand.
Okay. Now go to LO3, which says internal and external factors. So here you are looking at the internal practices of the company, and you are also looking at the external factors, right? So what are the internal policies and practice of organizations in terms of industry relations, in terms of recruitment, in terms of selection, in terms of going for health and safety, in terms of protecting people's, for example, health, for example, ethical issues, responsible training needs, and so on. And then you look at the external factors, which is the legislation, the grievances, internal grievances procedure, representation by trade union. So your internal things and external factors as well. You can do with SWOT analysis as well here, and pastel analysis, in other words, right? Okay, so pastel analysis is the external and the SWOT analysis in the internal, right? So those factors, they determine the internal and external relations in an organization, decision-making. If you, so you look up the strategies for confidence building or industry relations or internal policies, and then external legislation as well. Okay, so making sure that the both are working. Okay, LO4 has also P1 a P7, M1, M5, and so on. So you need to tackle the M and the P's first before you can claim a distinction. Okay. All right. I think that's enough for assignment discussion. So what we've looked at today, we looked at the assignment discussions, making sure that you understand the LO1, 2, 3, and 4, the merit, the distinction, the pass grade. Okay, there's a lot of stuff to cover within these LO4s, right? So there's 2 parts to the organization. Make sure that you go on to the model and do a lot of reading, please. Okay, making sure that you look at the verbs that you are tackling. Okay, making sure that you understand the distinction between the verbs, you know, the assessing and the examples, or the analyzing, or the evaluating, or the, you know, the pass and, you know, distinction or merit criteria. All right, I think that's enough for today. Any other question that you are not sure, or what's the situation?
Can I get recording of LO4?
Can I?
Can I get recording of LO4?
I didn't understand. Can I get what? Sorry?
Recording of LO4.
Oh, can you get the recording of LO4? We didn't do any recording yesterday, and we just covered this morning quickly. Basically, it's your application of HR practices in workplace. Okay, basically what we've covered today, I should have covered a little bit yesterday, LO4. But if I look LO4, I will send you the what you call them, the PowerPoints or whatever you want. I'll send you the LO4 PowerPoints. That's not a problem.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
No.
LO4 basically is the application. It's basically your application. Okay. So job application, how would you design a job application? How would you write a CV? How would you prepare a job spec, for example? That's the application. Most of it's in the application, right? Because it says LO4, apply human resource management in practices. So you are applying, right? You are applying the legislation, you're applying the policies, you're applying the recruitment and selection in practice. This is how we do it in practice. Advertising, how you would advertise, how you would put an advert in a newspaper, which type of newspaper you're going to put, what type of job is it? Is it related to IT job? Then you're not going to put it in a rubbish article or in a newspaper, which is irrelevant. So you need to select which, you know, how you are going to advertise, which journal, which newspaper, which website. Do you understand? Specific job adverts will go into specific platforms, because not every platform will advertise this particular job, right? Understand? So if you're applying for a law, job or HR manager job, where would you apply for it? Do you apply for an everyday newspaper? No, you have to apply in a newspaper or a platform which recruits professional job applications, which, you know, apply for specific platforms which regarding HR or maybe professional platforms, not an ordinary, you know, a strip, you know, or ordinary platform that advertises generally for anything. So you need to select. You understand? You need to specific platform regarding specific jobs. If you're applying for a accountant, you need to apply in accountant related platform. If you're applying for a personnel manager or a HR manager, I'm sure you need to select the platform that apply to the HR practices and so on. Okay, if you're applying for teaching jobs, you need to look at the teaching journals or teaching newspapers or teaching platforms or professional platforms. So that's in practice, that's application. So LO4 basically is the application. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So you didn't miss much. I'm sure you didn't miss much. However, I will try and get you the PowerPoints on LO4 if that's an issue. Okay.
Okay.
Any other thing? Any other you want to ask me?
No.
So I'll put a stop on the recording, and then we will expect your assignment. Do you have any other assignment, or this is the only assignment that you are going for just now?
No, I have any other assignment also.
You have another assignment?
Yeah,
Okay, which assignment is this?
marketing process and planning.
Okay, marketing, right. Okay, so you do that as well. Okay, so good luck with this work, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Have a good night. Is it good night or good evening?
Good evening.
Good evening. Okay, thank you very much, Ishika, for joining. Bye-bye.